This is Gemara Eruvin Daf Sadi. This is Shabbos Daf, the Daf for Chav Cheshvan, and is sponsored as a Schos Ili Neshama for Svidaiv and Miriam Eliyahu, who's Meiser Nefesh for Torah in the 50s, whose yard site is on Shabbos actually 58 years ago by a close friend, his son of the Daf of Izzy, the Neshama Shav and Eliyahu. The learning should be as Schos Ili Neshmasai. Of course, for all our Chaylim Yidamir Ben Yikir, many of them Veichaim, Ramachanit, Sarah, Chaim and Sarah, Shalom Sivin Nezidol, Sarah Baskinaz, Vasivs, Chaisei, Chaim Sarai, Yisrael Ben Yinot, Dalet, Shalei, Shalom Vasnavi, Shavik, Shachana, Radav Ben Ita, Riva, Daniel Ben Chana, Reza, Liva Burya, Vastovia Musa, Besay Sharchili Yisrael. We pick it up in the bottom of Pei Testament Beis. We just finished the statement of Rava. We're just going to read it again so we could read it into today's Daf and Daf Sadi Amar Aleph. That Rava taught us that Amar Rava, 3 lines in the bottom of Pei Testament Beis. For Amim Shadaka Isser, there are times that this Daka, that when you make this little house on top of the roof, that it could come out to be Isser. Again, we have multiple houses and all the roofs are connected. You put a little hut on the roof and then you make a daka, a little entranceway. So Abaye just taught us that if the entranceway faces the roof, then it allows you to carry, because that shows you that you're taking possession of the whole roof and no one else. Says Rava, there are times this will be l'isser. What are the times? Says Rava, if the doorway of this dock of this entranceway faces the garden of the house, the Amar, because you know what people are going to say moving along too. Sadi Amid Aleph, because people are going to say that you're doing it just to guard your house. That was the end of yesterday's daf, and now we continue with today's daf. Boy, Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama asked the following question, again, continuing the same theme. Houses, roofs, are roofs connected or roofs not connected? What's the status of the roof? And of course, let's remind ourselves that when the roofs are connected, that means they're going to be called one rishos. When they're separate, when they're not connected, it's going to be multiple rishuyos. And of course, this always plays back into whether you need to make an ear of chatzirais in order to carry from one roof to the next. So it says the Gemara, let's say you want to carry 2 amos from the roof and 2 amos onto a pillar. Ma'u, what is the din? So the Gemara thinks right now that this is the case. You have your roof, you have an item on top of your roof. Your roof, of course, is a caramelist, and the pillar is 10 by 4, so it's a shas yachid. So ask the Gemara, can I carry from my caramelist to my yachid, from my roof to the pillar? So whoever is bothered by the question that says, what do you mean you're not allowed to carry from a caramelist to yachid? That's exactly what the Gemara says. Amar Rabba, my kami baile. What's your question? Caramelist or yachid kami baile? You're asking about carrying from a caramelist to yachid? What's your question? Says the Gemara, no. Rami Bar Chama, agav chorfei lo yayin bei. He was too sharp, he jumped too fast, and therefore he didn't look into the question, he didn't think about what he was asking. What was the question? This was the question. That was his question. He wasn't talking about an amud, which is a din of Rosh Hashanah. He's talking about an achsadra, a pavilion, a platform, which has a din of a caramelist, just like the roof. Mahu, that was the din. Niamrinan, do we say 7 lines from the top? Do we say that the roof is a caramelist and it's not fit for dwelling? This pavilion is a caramelist, it's not fit for dwelling. Therefore, it's all one type of rishos. Therefore, you're allowed to transfer from the roof to this achsadra. Or do we say, just like you're not allowed to carry from one roof to the next roof, even though they both have the same status, they're both caramelists, they're both not roi to live on, but you're still not allowed to, so too you're not allowed to carry from the roof to the achsadra. As you see over here, here's the picture of your achsadra. It's actually going to be the Gemara's answer, so we can see this already, that the Gemara is going to answer that it's yoiser mi beis hasayim. We'll see that in one moment. But again, this is the case, so you're allowed to carry from roof to achsadra because they're both caramelists. Says the Gemara, before we answer the question, the Gemara says, Bayi Rav Bibi bar Abaye. So Rav Bibi bar Abaye came along and asked the following question. What about Biba Zamas Begag, Biba Zamas Bechorba? Am I allowed to carry 2 amas and a gag and 2 amas onto an adjoining chorba rune? Of course, we all realize that we're asking 2 and 2 because we're going in the shita. They only allowed to carry 4 amas. So it says Rav Bibi bar Abaye, am I allowed to carry 2 amas in the gag and 2 amos in the chorva? Mahu, what is it? That's the exact same case of Rami Bar Chama. It's a caramelist to a caramelist. They're both not roi for living. Are you allowed to do that? So why he's from a roof to a desolate area to a chorva, and he's different from a roof to a pavilion to an achsadra? Do you think I just come to ask you questions for no reason? Obviously, if I'm asking you a question, there's something in my question. And this is it. Now he explains. Achsadra lechazila dira. An achsadra, the platform you don't live on. V'chorva chazil adira, at some level it's a ruin, it's a broken down house, but at some level it's fit to live in. So now that we said that the chorva is chazil adira, what's your question? So now the Gemara explains where Rav Bibi bar Abaye was asking. Again, let's get the progression. The first the Gemara asked, what about carrying from a roof to this platform? The both Carmelists, are you allowed to carry one from the other? Comes to Rav Bibi Abaye and he says, what about carrying from the roof to the rune, to the chorva? The Gemara says it's the same question. Rav Bibi Abaye explains, no, it's not the same question. Because why not? Because a chorva at some level is fit to live in. And now the Gemara explains that Rav Bibi Abaye is an additional question. As the Gemara says, Rav Bibi Abaye is going on that option, on that side, on that path. If you're going to tell me, if you're going to tell me that your achsadra is somewhere it's not fit to live in, so maybe a chorva is different. Or perhaps hashtamiyah, less but diurin. It's true that a chorva is chazi, it's fit, you theoretically could live in it. Well, practically, is there someone living there? No. Less la diurin, there's no one living there, so maybe it's the same case. And the Gemara answers on both of these questions. Teiku, we do not have an answer. Hopefully, Mashiach will be here soon and we'll have an answer. Here is another picture of your roof to your achsadra. Again, this was the first Pshat Rashi that was going on the roof of this achsadra. Here's the second Pshat Rashi that is going inside the achsadra. Again, basically because it's going to be a Carmelist. Says Rabbi Abaye, what about from the roof to the chorva? As you see over here, and points out at the bottom of the picture very nicely, Tosfos learns in Rashi that it means that it's going inside the chorva, not to the roof, and then says that is the end of that. So the Gemara answers Teiku, we don't have any answers. And we move along to the next case of the Gemara. Says the Gemara on the second half of the Yamud, Sadi Yamud Aleph. Gagin Hashavim the Rishus Rabim. What is the story that we have? Gagin Hashavim. One more time. Gagin Hashavim. We have roofs that are equal. Lira Meir, according to Rav Meir. Lira Meir. V'gag Yechidi Lira Rabbanan. And what's the story of a singular roof according to the Rabbanan? Again, what's this Rav Meir and what's this Rabbanan? Because, if you remember back in the Mishnah on Peitasam and Aleph, the Gemara said that the Shita of Rav Meir is that when the roofs are more than 10 Tvachim apart, this was yesterday's daf, then Rav Meir said they have a different status of Rishiyos, and the Chachamim said that no, each one is its own Rishos. So now the Gemara asks, what happens according to Rav Meir if they're not different levels, all the roofs are equal? Or, according to the Rabbanan, if it's one singular roof, what is the status of that roof? Says the Gemara, and of course, I'll just preface that if what the Gemara is about to say sounds contradictory to what we learned yesterday, that's good, because that's going to be the question. So don't be bothered. Rav Amar Mutzal Taltal Bekulai, Ushmul Amar Imitalton Boy Eladalit. Rav says you're allowed to carry as much as you want on the roof. Ushmul says you're only allowed to carry Dalid Amis. Says the Gemara, Rav Amar Mutzal Taltal Bekulai, you're allowed to carry on the whole roof. Bekulai Kasha Derav, that's a steer to Rav. Because Rav yesterday told us, in the opinion of the Chachamim, that say it's all one big roof. Rav said, you know how much you can carry? Just Daled Amos. Here Rav is saying, you let it carry the whole roof. Answers the Gemara, Hasam le'minkra mechitzta. Before, Rav was discussing a case that according to the Chachamim was one big roof. So it wasn't minkra, wasn't recognizable, the partitions. And that's why Rav said he could only carry Daled Amos. But Hach in our case, minkra mechitzta, it's recognizable because it's one singular roof. And therefore you could carry on the whole roof. And basically we're differentiating now between this case and between the case of the Mishnah. The case of the Mishnah was that you have multiple roofs all connected. That's what Rav says. It's true they're connected, and according to the Chachamim, they're all considered their own Rishus, but the Mechitzas aren't so recognizable. So Rav said over there only 4 Amis. Over here today, when it's actually a singular roof, one roof with walls around it, that's very recognizable, Rav says you could carry in the whole thing. So again, that's a steer to Shmuel, because Shmuel yesterday told us on that one big roof, according to the Chachamim, that each part of the roof has its own rishos. Shmuel said he could carry the whole thing. Answers the Gemara, yesterday it was a smaller roof, it wasn't so large. Here it's larger than Tusa, and therefore what? Avidan lamala. Vani mechitzas, I'm sorry, lamata avidan, lamala loy avidan. Where are their mechitzas? Where are their walls? On the bottom of the house. There are no walls on the roof. And therefore, Vahave, what is it comparable to? Kekarfev, an enclosure, Yosef Beisasayim, which is more than 2 saw. Shelah Yehukaf Ladir, those important words that we saw extensively before, that we have this enclosure in the middle of the field, which you don't actually live in, use it for storage, etc. And we said that whenever it's more than 2 saw, if it's not made to live in it, what's the din? And that's why you can only carry 4 amos because it is too large. So according to Shmuel, the difference is that today's Gemara is talking about a larger roof. As you see over here, that it is larger than 2 saw. That is the reason why Shmuel says it is only allowed to be carried 4 amos. Whereas yesterday Shmuel taught us that no, you let it carry in the whole roof because it is smaller. Rav differentiated that yesterday it was one large roof with many subdivisions, we'll call it. Here's another case of a gag yechidi. That's a piece of the chacham, and this is where Shmuel explains that it's more than 2 saw. And then again, here we're explaining the opinion of Rav. Rav said yesterday it wasn't minkar mechitzta, because yesterday it was separate houses on the bottom, and it was not recognizable, the differentiation between the walls. Over here today it is minkara mechitzta. And we continue with the Gemara, Itmar, with another case. Sfina, we have a case of a boat. What is the status of carrying on a boat? Again, a machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Says Rav bekulai. Rav says again, just like he taught us a moment ago, that you're allowed to carry in the whole singular house roof, so too in a boat. Shmuel says no. Now the Gemara explains. Rav Amar Mutzataltel bekulai. Moving along to Sadi Amid Beis. Rav says you're allowed to carry the whole thing. Ask the Gemara. Explains the Gemara. You know why? Because they're mechitzais. The boat has walls. The boat has walls of the boat that keeps it in the water. So Shmuel says this should sound familiar. We had this Gemara way back when. So what does Shmuel hold? Why does Shmuel say you can only carry 4 amos? Why? Mechitzas lavriach mayim asuyos. Says Shmuel, these mechitzas are not made as partitions. They're not made for privacy. They're not made to enclose you. Why do you have these mechitzas? Just because you have to stay in the water. You have to push away the water. So Shmuel says they're not real mechitzas. Therefore, they're not real partitions. Therefore, you can only carry 4 amos. Amalei Rav Chia bar Yosef Shmuel hilchos like Kavaseich or hilchos like Rav. They asked Shmuel, who does the halacha follow? And Shmuel said, you know what? I'm wrong. Amalei hilchos like Rav. I'm made to Rav. Rav is correct. They let it carry in the whole boat. And the Gemara in a moment is going to give a different explanation of this Shmuel admittance. But first, Amar Rav Gidol Amar Rav Chia bar Yosef umoid Rav. Again, Rav said that you carry the whole boat. You know where he admits? Shem kafal bia, you flip the boat over. Shem if you flip the boat over, as you see over here, here's a flipped over boat. If you flip over the boat and now you're underneath the boat, hopefully there's some airspace, you're underneath the boat, how much can you carry? Says Rav, I agree to Shmuel, you can only carry 4 amos. Says the Gemara, why did you flip over the boat? Kafalamai. What's the reason? Sadi Mabei, 6 lines down. If you flipped over the boat because coming Shabbos, you got no house, you flip it over and you're going to live under the boat. Says the Gemara, so then that should be a case. It's your singular place. There's mechitzas around it. It's like the singular wall. So according to Rav, you should be allowed to carry the whole thing. Why would he admit to Shmuel in this case? Ella, what's the din? Shekafel is zofta. You flipped it over to tar it. You have to repair the boat. You have to tar the bottom of the boat. And that's where Rav says, I admit to Shmuel, can only carry 4 amos because it wasn't flipped over for the mechitzas. As you see in Rashi, looking at Rashi for one moment, Rashi says, Shekafel is afta, shebatal mechitzasa, mechitzuseha, mitayras dira. Because the mechitzas, the partitions, are no longer being used as dwelling mechitzas. They don't know this calls man kvisasa, loyla diras malin, loyla diras matan, vavika amud ba'alma, just like a pillar. Why? Because the reason you flipped it over was not to live in there, was to fix the boat, and the fact that there happen to be walls going down, that's not going to help you. Now the Gemara explains that when we said a moment ago that Shmuel admitted to Rav that the halacha was like him, Rav Ashi masni asfina. Rav Ashi learned that on the case of the sfina, that's where Shmuel admitted. Rav Achabrei de Rav masilach sadra. On a different case, on a case of Meaning Sfina was what the Gemara said a moment ago. That's how the Gemara quoted the story that Kavasich and Shmuel responded Karav, 5 lines down. But comes along Rav Acha, Braid the Rav, and says, no, it's a different case. It's a case of an Achsadra in a pavilion. That's where Shmuel admitted. The Etmar we learned. Achsadra bebika. This should sound familiar. We have this in Gemara Shabbos, we have this in Gemara Eruvin. We have a pavilion, a gazebo perhaps, in a valley. Rav Amar, you're allowed to carry throughout the whole pavilion, the whole gazebo. Shmuel Amar, you're allowed to carry 4 amos. The Gemara explains, Rav, the walls of the gazebo, of this pavilion, here's your classic pavilion, the sides, shoot down on all 4 sides, says Rav, you're allowed to carry, no problem. Why? We don't say big tikra. And that is the machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Let's take, now the Gemara continues. The Gemara continues. V'Rav aliba d'Rameir. Now the Gemara asks. Let's do a little math. According to Rav Meir, litaltel migag lechatzer. You should be allowed to carry from the roof to an adjoining chatzer. Why can't you? Meaning, according to Rav, what's going on over here? Look at Rashi for a moment. This is Rashi I was looking for. Rashi says, Rav aliba d'Rameir. Kivan da'amar begagin ashavim mitalten bekulan. What did Rav say? That when the roofs are equal, you let it carry throughout the whole roof. Alma, lav karmelis ninu. According to Rav, it's not a karmelis. According to Rameir, I should say. Litaltel migag l'chatzer. Alma amrina l'kaman. Alama amrina l'kaman. Meaning, the Gemara is asking, if the roof is the din of a karmelis, you should be allowed to carry from it to the chatzar. And now Rashi speaks out the question. Alama amrina l'kaman the divir Rameir gagin rishus la'atzman chatzir rishus la'atzman dei medal to migag l'chatzar. So Gemara is asking, I don't understand. If the roof is the din of a karmelis, why are you not allowed to carry it to the adjoining chatzar? Answers the Gemara. Gezerah misham Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi. Who is Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi? He was one blot ago that said Gezerah misham tal b'rshus harabim. The same reason why we said first let's get the picture and then we'll explain. Over here you said, actually that is the next Gemara. One more time. What is the Gezerah misham tal? Gezerah misham tal was well, you discussed the case where we had a pillar in the middle of your backyard. So the pillar is 10 by 4, so Rosh Yachid. Your backyard is Rosh Yachid. So you let it carry from the backyard to the pillar? We said no. Why? Gezerah, you might come to carry onto a towel, onto the pillar, when it's in Rosh Hashanah. So says the Gemara, in this case as well, we're not going to let you carry from the roof to the Chatzar. Gezerah, you might come to carry in Rosh Hashanah onto a different type of a Rishos. That was Rav. Says the Gemara, Ushmuel aliba d'Rabbanan. Now, the way that Shmuel learns, why doesn't he allow you to carry from the gag to the karfif? I'm sorry, I just realized I said something wrong. Let's go back 1 second. In the previous question, when the Gemara said, V'Rav aliba d'Rameir, look at that Rashi. I'm sorry, the Rashi that's highlighted over here. I just read it a little bit too fast. I said it incorrectly. I'm sorry. It's not a karmelis. The Gemara's question was, according to Rameir, all the roofs are shayachid. So the Gemara wants to know why you're not allowed to carry from the roof to the chatzar, which is also Rosh Yachid. On that, the Gemara answered, Gezerah misham tal b'Rosh Hashanah, and now everything should fit much better, because the case of a tal is also Rosh Yachid, just like here, but we're afraid you're going to come to carry in Rosh Hashanah to it. Now, the Gemara asks, Shmuel, aliba d'Rabbanan, that's what we explained a moment ago, I'm sorry, Nitalto migag likarfif, we should be allowed to carry from the gag, which is a karmelis, to a karfif, which is a karmelis. Amar Rav bar Ula, Gezerah shami yifchagi pas chais, hagag, we're afraid the gag is going to shrink, it's going to become smaller, it's going to lose its status of Rosh Hashanah, and that's why we don't let, of karmelis, I'm sorry, it's going to become a Rosh Hashanah, and that's why we don't let you carry from there to the enclosure. Says the Gemara, so we should never let you to carry from one karfif to the next. They're both karmelises, but maybe, and one of a div of a karmelis. Says the Gemara, maybe it's going to shrink. Says the Gemara, over there, if it shrinks, you'll realize, here not. Here you see that according to Shmuel, that when the roof, and again, this is really speaks to what we said a moment ago, that the roof, according to Shmuel, was more than 2 sa. Says the Gemara, that's why it's a karmelis. So ask the Gemara, and that's why Shmuel said he can only carry Dalet Amos. So the Gemara wants to know, so you should be allowed to carry from the roof to the karmelis adjoining it. On that, the Gemara answers that no, maybe the roof will become less than 2 sa, as you see over here, nifchas hagag, and then what's going to happen? it's going to become a Rishus HaYachid. Actually, you see so nicely how they show Nifchas Agag. You see like the little debris on the side over here. You see it's a little bit broken down on the side. There you see that the roof is smaller. So now it becomes less than 2 sa. And that's the reason why you're not going to be allowed to carry to the Carmelis. The Gemara asked, so you should not be allowed to carry from one Karfeif to the next. And that the Gemara answered no, because it is recognizable when it diminishes. Everyone should have a fabulous Shabbos. And if you're this after Shabbos, it should be a wonderful week.